Insert Disc 2.
RetroGaming Radio, 2006. A different hobby than sitting with your ass strapped up to Xbox Live. God, I love Generation Jimmy. This is retarded. Why am I reading this list? Hey, that's Pikachu. Keep it retro. Hello, folks. Welcome to the August 2006 edition of Retro Gaming Radio. This is Shane R. Monroe, your host. Welcome to the program. Well, this is it, folks. This is the beginning of the broadcast year, and as promised, we have a gigantic show for you. Huge show. Tons of stuff. 8-bit flashback, 16-bit flashback, Year 7 CD. Talk about the GP2X. We're going to have a special guest appearance giving us a hardware flashback, how to go arcade game shopping at your local auction. You're going to love that. We have an editorial commentary, tons more. It's going to be huge. We have a giant Bits and Bytes, of course. It's been like 3 months since we've got around to the news, and boy, do we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So, let's start off the show with what the hell has been going on for the last several months. Lots of people have written in and said, hey, we got no June show. We had a best of earlier this year. We had another best of last month. What is going on? Well, I'm going to give you an idea what's been going on. Well, first of all, you have to understand what the situation is like here at the house. I record in my free time or times when the house is empty. Usually when the house is empty is the best because I don't have to leave my native environment. I've got all my software set up. I've got all my levels set up. Everything is convenient right here on my workstation here at my desk. Well, if anybody's home, basically, I can't record here because my computer's in the living room and people want to watch TV, they want to play video games, they want to do whatever, which pretty much makes it so that I can't be in here recording. I can produce the show, I can do research, I can do all sorts of stuff, but to actually record will inconvenience at least one person, possibly more than one person. And so usually I like to record the show during times when there's fewer people here or nobody here. Usually I telework on Tuesdays and Fridays, which means that during my lunch hour I can get down an hour, hour and a half a show. That's really, really convenient for me to be able to do that. There's also nights, like Saturday night, which I'm recording right now, when my wife is off scrapbooking, my kids are in bed, and everything is nice and quiet, and I get a chance to record. Well, that doesn't always work out either. And so what we really have during the summertime months, from like the middle of May until the middle of August, when summer vacation happens, we have kids about the house. We have my wife, who's a teacher here at the house, and I can't record. I have to actually find a time to record. Now, most of you know that Retro Gaming Radio is not recorded in a single lump segment like I do with Dual Screen Radio with Chris or the way other shows work out. I have so much content, 3-4 hour shows, I can't do it in one sitting. Things change. I like to keep Bits and Bytes for the end because I get the most news that way. So I end up in a position where I can't record, I get a piece or two recorded, but I can't finish it. So it goes back and forth like this. Well, of course, the regular summertime problem is that my wife and family, everybody's home on Tuesdays and Fridays. My wife only goes out scrapbooking every other week. So I have 2 weekends a month that I can record right here on my workstation. So when she doesn't have the urge to go scrapbooking, then she's at home. And I don't get to record on Saturdays either. I know it sounds like, wah, you don't get to record, wah, figure out something else, wah. Well, the honest truth is I could go elsewhere. I could go into the back room and drag my laptop and hope that I record it well there. But laptop recording's been nothing but trouble for us over at DSR, and it's becoming problematic here. So I like to keep my options a little bit closed and work on my computer whenever possible. Well, let's talk about what else happened. Let's say that was just it. That's summer in a nutshell. If you go back and look at last year's show, summer months were really hard. The shows were always late, if at all. There was a best of or a missed show last year. And that all had to do with the fact that I can't get free time to record when I need to. This year was something extra special. Two things happened this year. One, my wife got pregnant. So she is now 5, 6, 7 months along throughout the summer. Due in October. It's a boy. We're naming him Brian Smith after our past friend, who, of course, was the producer of this show. He is going to be named in memory of Brian. And so he's due in October. Well, have you ever been around a pregnant woman during the summertime when it's hot, humid, muggy, and they don't want to do anything? You know what they do? They sleep a lot. So instead of leaving the house so I can record, they go off to sleep. Well, that would be really cool. You're sitting there going, hey, well, she's not in the living room. Kick the kids out, record the show. Doesn't work that way. See, my voice tends to carry. I have a very small house, and when I'm recording, my wife says she can hear it, and it keeps her awake. So when she's sleeping, which she does a lot being pregnant, I don't get to record either. So while she may sleep in till noon on Tuesdays and Fridays, when I possibly could record, I can't record still because she's sleeping. Doesn't really help a lot, right? The other thing that came up this summer, which I have been pushing for a long, long time, my kid, who has been living with her mother for the last 10 years, has finally decided to come here and be with us. Well, as I just mentioned a few moments ago, I've got a pretty small house. So part of bringing her here was that we needed to expand the house. And, of course, the concept there was we would take the garage and convert it into living spaces so that I could give her a new room as well as enclose my laundry room and do all this other crap. Well, as you can only imagine, okay, let's make a long story short here. Originally, I was going to have all of this work done professionally. Refinance my house, get some cash, blah, blah, blah. Suffice to say, I expected to get like 60 grand, and I got 15 grand, which meant that all of my plans to do this conversion and to get all of this stuff done in a professional manner, through the regular channels, permits, and, having the carpenters come in and do all that stuff. That's what I wanted to do. I did not want the additional burden of having to do any work myself because, one, I am not very good at it. If it doesn't have a keyboard attached to it, I can't work it. I mean, really, let's be honest. My handiwork is very crappy. So the concept of only having 15 grand versus 80 grand severely limits what you can do. And Phoenix is a growing community. It's a huge town, and it's getting bigger every single day. And contractors can basically do new construction anytime they want to. Every contractor in town is booked for months. And they're getting these really big, fat, really, really top-heavy new constructions. So they're off doing new construction, and they're getting paid top dollar to do so. So to try to find one that'll break themselves away, from the teat that's getting fed through these new constructions and have them come and do cheap remodeling or cheap work and labor doing, basic handyman stuff, nobody wants to do it. So what they do is they jack their price up to keep you from taking the bid. So I checked contractor after contractor. The cheapest I could get my conversion for was 26 grand. That didn't work out. It had to be done. I mean, my kid had to have some place to sleep. So what had to basically happen is my dad, who's a general contractor, has been for 20 years, came down here. I flew him down, or we drove down, bringing all of his tools, and together, in bonsai time, I'm talking about doing 2 weeks of work in 4 days. We've done that a couple of times now. I would take, my weekends would be nothing more than back-to-back physical labor. Now, you guys have seen pictures of me. You know that I'm not exactly the carpenter type. But in order to get things done, in order to make this work on 14 grand, I had to basically suck it up. And now my dad couldn't do everything. He had to go back to his own job. So weekends ended up being 12, 13, 14, 16-hour days where myself, my family, my wife, my kids, well, not my wife because she's pregnant, so she wasn't doing a whole lot at all. So pretty much me and occasionally what my kids could do to help out, that's what I was doing. You know, texturing, taping, mudding, painting, repairing holes, hanging shelves, building, making trim, you name it, I've had to do it this month. This has been, you know, and of course, it all happened in 1 month. This whole thing basically happened in a single month period of time. And that's what I've been doing. That's where all of my time has been. I haven't had time to do anything for myself. It got so bad that I finally I'm starting to drop projects just to keep up with things like retro gaming radio, to keep up with dual screen radio, to keep up with the things of my highest commitment. You know, I closed FamilyGuyFiles.com, 4-year website, tons of traffic, and I finally had to let that go. I simply don't have the time to do it right, and I'm not going to let it sit out there and rot and look like a crappy site and not update it, not take care of it. I'd rather pull it down. I'm not going to do something half-assed if I can help it. And I've really felt crappy about not getting dual screen radio and retro gaming radio out. You know, I've had a whole month away from dual screen radio. I've had months away from retro gaming radio. There's so many things I want to do. I want to work on some of the sites. I want to improve. I want to get the Year 7 DVD out. You know? And that's my next goal. My next project after getting this August show out is to prep, get the DVD ready to go, and get it on pre-order so you guys can light the fire under my butt and get it done. You know? That's how things have had to work out. Completely reactionary. You know? I got to a point to where I ended up having to put 3 different floors down in the period of a weekend, and each one of those rooms had to be ready to go before they came and laid down the flooring, the tile, the laminate, the carpet. I'm telling you, it's insane. And if that wasn't enough, you know, most of you know that I'm in martial arts. I do martial arts, and we have testing coming up. We have belt testing coming up in a week. So not only do I have all of this stuff, the pregnant wife, I've got, you know, my kid moved in, you know, so basically I went from 1 teenager to 2. My wife's pregnant with a 3rd, and I'm trying to figure out how to build a $30,000 addition for $14,000. Oh, the air conditioner had to be replaced too. Did I mention that? Yeah. So it's been a very stressful, long, drawn-out, incredibly busy couple of months. Not to say that I'm upset about the concept. I mean, I've been wanting my kid to come down here and live with me for the longest time, and now I've got her here, and that's great. But the process of making all of this happen, they had to go to my other daughter's starting high school. You know, so there's all of that rigmarole. We were standing in line. That's insane. Have you guys ever done that? Have you ever registered a kid for high school? It's insane. They have you standing in line after line. Maybe it was just this high school that was totally dinked. I don't know. But standing in line, we were there for 5 hours to get an ID card, a schedule, and a uniform. You know, a PE uniform. The hell is that? You know? So anyway, suffice to say, and I know I've been saying this on the forums and people don't believe me, but things are starting to smooth out. All the heavy work is done on the house. My kids are going back to school. My wife's going back to school. Things are starting to level out in life. Testing's almost over with for martial arts. All of these things that have been the culmination of why Retro Gaming Radio hasn't been around for a few months, now you know why. It's been busy. What can I tell you? So that's what you guys have wanted to know. What's been going on? What's been wrong with the show? Well, there you have it. Lack of personal time. That's it. Now, something great did happen, other than my kid moving in. I did have the opportunity, finally, and this is great because the construction made this happen. I had a nice, big, fat Sony Wega 36-inch CRT television in my living room. Now, my living room is small. I told you already I got a small house, right? Well, you know how big a 36-inch CRT is. Well, one of the rooms that we built off the living room, we converted the garage into 3 rooms. One of them's a movie nook, where basically it's a 10 by 5 foot room with nothing but shelves in it. Right now my pinball machine's in there. that have nothing but movies. I have room to put my movies, my Nintendo DS games, all my boxes, all that good stuff, CDs. So now I've got a media room where I can actually store stuff. Well, the problem is the door to the media room is right where this big, giant, 300-pound, huge monster Sony Wega is. So I basically told my wife that we needed to move up. And I've been being promised a plasma television for a long time. As soon as everything lined up, the money and everything else. So as it turned out, I got asked to tell this story, folks. Flair, our intern, the guy responsible for the Best Of shows, guy I couldn't live without these days, he was nice enough to ask me to tell my plasma story. And this is a pretty good story, so I'm going to tell you the whole deal about getting this plasma. The first thing you got to know is, and if you're not interested in this whole story, you can skip ahead, but Flair asked me to tell it, and I think it's kind of interesting. So, I had a particular price point. I had a particular set of features I wanted. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I wasn't willing to take anything else. So until the price was right, until all of my needs were met, I wasn't going to make the jump into getting the plasma. Because if you wait long enough, all this stuff's going to happen. So I waited. So what exactly did I end up wanting? Well, I wanted at least 42 inches. I wanted plasma, real HD, not that EDTV crap, HDMI inputs, enough inputs to where I wouldn't have to use a switch box on anything, and I wanted a PC input for my white box. I wanted to plug my white box computer directly to the television, no super video. I wanted digital all the way. And, of course, I wanted it to be a name brand. I wasn't going to get some plasma TV because who knows if is going to be there in another year to help me out. I also wanted to make sure I got a second generation plasma television because I know the lifespan of the original plasma generation was fairly short. So I wanted to get the second generation. I wanted the name brand. I wanted all the features. And I wasn't willing to settle for projection. My living room is very small. My viewing angles are extreme. No projection. It has to fit on the wall. These were my requirements, right? Of course, the critical thing was the price, right? Nobody wants to spend $5,000 on a TV no matter how cool it is. And my wife sure as hell wasn't going to let me spend $5,000 on a TV no matter what it did. It could do the dishes, clean the floor, it could do everything. And there wasn't going to be any $5,000 TV in my future. So my price range, what I wanted to spend was $2,000. So I wanted a particular set of parameters. I wanted all of this, and I wanted it for $2,000. And I was willing to wait. I've been waiting for a year. I've tucked the money away a little bit at a time, and I was waiting for the day that I could get exactly what I wanted for the price I wanted. Makes good sense, right? So, with me, there's always a story, right? It's not just a matter of just running down and, run down, buy the TV, bring it home, and enjoy. No. There's always a story when it comes to my particular needs. Of course, I wanted to do it locally, right? If something goes wrong, I want to be able to take the thing back. You get it from Amazon, something like that. You're out 2 weeks waiting for something bad to happen, right? Or something good to happen, some sort of fix. So anyway, all the stars aligned, and I figured that on the 4th of July, if there was going to be a sale, that would be the time. And I was right. I went down to Fry's Electronics, Best Buy, and I found the things that met my spec. I went to my wife and told her it was time, that everything lined up. And she said, okay, well, in light of us putting in the movie nook and everything, it sounds like a good time. So the Toshiba 42-inch plasma was what I was looking at. It's $2,400, $2,300 retail, on sale for $2,000. Did my research, priced around. It turned out that at the time that I bought it was the number 6 best-selling flat panel TV on the market. So it's like the reviews are good. I did my time. Now, just to make sure, again, that my brain was in the right spot, I did more research on plasma and made sure that all the urban legends about plasma and all that good stuff were solved. Because, people get freaked out about plasma. And I really didn't know a lot about it. So I wanted to make sure I was educated. So once I was happy with that, I was good to go. Now, buying the TV was easy. Unlike buying my washer, for those of you who know the washer story from Fry's, it was actually pretty simple to buy the television. I asked a friend of mine to bring his truck down. I don't have anything to move something that big, and help me load it and unload it at my house. And then I asked him if he would come in and help me move my big, giant-ass Sony Wega to my spare room. You know, the wife's pregnant, and she can't help me, and you got to get the TV out before you can get this big TV in. Now, I got to pause just for a minute and explain to you how technology works in my house. It's like the phasers you use on the boards. It's set for a rotating modulation. When the best piece of technology in the house gets replaced, it replaces the lower form of technology, and so on. So when I build a new computer, my wife gets the old one, and my kids get hers. When the kids' computer gets sold, donated, given away, or whatever. So when the Wega was upgraded to the Plasma, it got rotated into the spare room. The spare room TV got moved into the master bedroom, and then we found a home for the old TV that used to be in the master bedroom. In common speak, I had to trash 3 full rooms to make this upgrade happen. Considering my wife just deep cleaned the house, didn't go over very well with her. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. So my friend brought the TV into the house. We hauled back the Monster Wega and the stand. Naturally, I didn't want to inconvenience my friend when he was helping me out, so I basically ripped out all the electronics from the TV base. I needed his help to put the TV back up in the spare room. So, I had to destroy the entire living room. It basically looked like the island of misfit electronics at that point. You know what I'm saying? There was not a piece that looked like it was hooked up anywhere. Once we got the Wega back, put it on its stand, I sent my friend off with a heart-filled thanks and went to work. Of course, the first thing you have to do is put up the wall mount. Now, what you don't know about buying a new TV, at least I didn't, was the extra costs involved. Yeah, the wall mount wasn't cheap. I got a cheap, inexpensive wall mount for $90. They go up to hundreds of dollars, folks, so plan ahead. Little did I know that this wall mount would be one of the first of many challenges I would face. It was Friday night about 8 p.m., because I have to use time references here so you know what sort of effort this entailed. The wall mount required to be bolted to studs in your wall. No problem there. Own a stud finder. I found the whereabouts on the wall I wanted the TV, found the 2 studs, used a level, make sure they were even, and drilled the holes. Now here's what's funny. One of the holes didn't hit its mark. There really wasn't a stud there. The stud finder's old. Turned out that instead of the studs being 16 inches off center, or on center rather, like the stud should be, the first stud was 14 inches on center. Terrific. So the wall mount itself started at 16 inches and went up to like 22. Therefore, I couldn't mount the thing right where I wanted it. Lots of drilling and dicking around later, I moved over 1 stud and got my holes leveled and drilled, and I was finally ready to hang the mount. Now, it's pushing a little later, 9 p.m.-ish, and I'm getting tired, but the instructions that came with the wall mount were so obscure. I mean, all pictures and no text. When did that happen? Do people really can't read? Is that it? I don't know. Anyway, so there was no way to compare the hardware that came in the box, and there was a lot of it, to the list of materials. Some of the pictures were for mounting in concrete, some for wood studs. It was a huge mess. Anyway, I finally figured it out and started putting the screws into the wall with the mounting plate. Now, they give you this handy-dandy Allen wrench to put these in with, the cheap, crappy ones they include with it, which if you've ever put in 3-inch bolts with an Allen wrench, you know this is evil. Eventually, I ended up stripping the Allen head, and it occurred to me that these bolts had hex heads on them. Look, I wasn't very clever at that point at the night, if you hadn't figured it out. So, after I'd wrestled far too long with it, I broke out the ratchet, drove those babies home. Imagine that, it went a lot faster once I started ratcheting. Got the mount on the wall, now it's time for the mounts on the TV. Now, these looked easier, but the material list was once again wanting. I did figure it out, though, and put the mounts on. Then came time to see if my wife would be able to hang the mount, let me hang the TV on the mount, or if I was going to need to call my friend in the morning. Now, it was late. It was really late by now. I wasn't going to be able to call him. And you know how it is, folks. Would you really be able to go to bed that night if you had this huge, beautiful television sitting on your living room floor and not up on the wall? After you went through all that work to put it up? I didn't think so. Anyway, so we did a weight test. It's about 70 pounds. My wife assured me that if we got it up quickly, she could do it. Before we mounted it, though, we had to remove the stand. And I guess I should have checked the stand attachment method before I put on the mounts. Because the mounts had to be removed before I could remove the stupid 4 screws holding the stand on. It's crazy. It was insane. Now let me tell you something about that mounting kit, folks. You would think that the mount on the wall and the mounts on the TV would have some play in them. The hooks on the back of the TV would have a couple inches to the right or left so you wouldn't have to be, dead on when you put the TV up. Oh, man, was I ever wrong. There was no clearance on the left or right of the hooks on the TV mount. I want you to imagine what it's like with this big pregnant woman hefting this 70-pound television up on the wall. Amazingly enough, our first attempt, it went on. And I'll tell you what, folks, there is nothing that knots your stomach up like hanging a 70-pound, $2,000 TV on your wall and praying that it stays up there. Oh, yeah, I put the screws in and I knew it would hold, but still. Dude, you have nightmares that night, wondering whether or not something was going to fall out. Still, I look up there right now and look at my TV and I'm thinking, man, you worry about it. I guess eventually that goes away. All right, so TV's up on the wall, living room's completely trash, and it's pretty late. I throw the power cables up, plug the cable in from the wall, just to see it work. My wife's standing over me, expectantly, waiting to be impressed. Now, gentlemen, and ladies, this is where I'd like to take a break from the story and give you a nickel's worth of free advice. Make sure your family members are properly educated on the difference between crisp, small CRTs and big, not-so-crisp plasma TVs, and the difference that the quality of the source of the video makes. Going from a Sony Wega CRT to a plasma on basic cable wasn't the right move to make when trying to make a first good impression on my wife. Basically, the first thing out of her mouth was, that picture looks terrible. And let's be honest, it did look terrible. Low-res basic cable shoved into a nice high-res plasma ain't going to leave you breathless, folks. At this point, my wife is too tired to stay up and heads to bed, probably thinking her husband just got cheated out of $2,000. I assured her that on the way to the bedroom that I'd pick up the HD cable box and the morrow she would see the light. She would see it. Before I turned in myself, I started making a shopping list of all the cables I was going to need to pick up based on my configuration. Now, my components consisted of a GameCube, a VCR, a PC white box or media center, DVD player, HD cable box, and my receiver. I called Cox Cable Tech Support to find out if their cable boxes supported HDMI, because my TV did. Want the best signal possible. I was assured that it supported it. However, due to the nature of HDMI and the various types of TVs, they wouldn't support it. They expect you to use component video. Fine, I told them I'll try HDMI, and if that doesn't savvy up, I'll go back to component. Well, folks, we're looking at 1:30 in the morning now, and I needed to crash. By 8:30, my body decided it was time to get up and go get the HD cable box, like a kid at Christmas time. So I drove to Cox Cable Center, figuring the early bird gets the worm, and I'd be in and out in no time. Wrong answer. I took number 21 from the ticket-o-thon and saw they were serving number 8. And me without my Nintendo DS to pass the time. An hour later, I was the proud owner of an HD cable box. Now it was time to go cable shopping. Smart thing, I checked the back of the cable box to absolutely positively make sure it was HDMI. Glad I did, because it wasn't HDMI, it was DVI. Nice connection, but not quite HDMI. This would change my list a bit. So back to Fry's Electronics, I broke out my list, a component cable for the PS2. At this point, I figured I'd put the PS2 in the living room, a couple component cables for the DVD, possibly the cable box, a couple optical cables for audio, a high-quality RCA plug for digital audio. Oh, and what's this? There's a DVI to HDMI converter cable. Wow, that's cool. $50! I felt this sharp, stabbing pain in my butt. But aside, I blew the load on the TV. I might as well do right by the cables. Folks, be sure to budget for cables. I left with medium grade, maybe low to medium grade cables, and I kicked out $180. Now it's time to go home and put this mess together. Now it's 1 p.m. or so. I stopped to get my family some lunch, figured they'd appreciate it. I'm a considerate guy, husband, father. Checked the mail. My replacement copy of Monsters, Inc. showed up in the mail. Ours just vanished into nowhere land. So I figured it was a hint as to what we would break the TV in with, right? Does that not sound right? First, I wanted to see the PS2 on the TV, so I tried that first. During the move around, I must have dislodged one of my mod chip wires because now the system wouldn't boot at all. So, downer. It came out of the entertainment center and the GameCube went in. Next up, the HD cable box. I was ready to show my wife that we did good. Optical out to the receiver, DVI to HDMI to the TV. Great. Power up, and I find out I have to call a 1-800 number to activate the box. You know, this is way too many hoops to jump through for this, folks. I called the automated service, found out it would take up to 2 hours to activate. You know, my wife's pissed. She was going to go scrapbooking that night. She wanted to watch some TV. Well, she is pissy. Whatever. We'll move on to the DVD player. For the DVD player, RCA digital out to the receiver, component video to the TV, Pirates of the Caribbean was in the player. I fired it up. Screen was bluish. Checked all the cables. Everything was hooked up right. I was puzzled. I tried Super Video to the TV, and that worked fine. So I dinged with it and realized that the DVD player itself had to be changed to component out versus S-Video out. Had no idea that was the case. Very interesting. So once done, I was treated to a great picture. Well, the cable still isn't working, so I call a human that gets me online right away. I guess I should have called them first. Strangely enough, though, the channels still all look like crap. So I took a look around to find out what might be going on. Turns out that the HD channels are 700 to like 720, and the rest of the channels are the same crappy-ass channels I had before. So we start looking at the HD channels. Trust me on this one, folks. If you want to see a channel done right in high def, if you want to impress the wife and the family, show them that you did right paying $2,000, fire up Discovery HD first. We turned on Dinosaur Planet, and it was unfriggin' believable. Totally crisp, totally clean. Well, the family wasn't all that interested in watching Discovery HD, so I threw Monsters, Inc. in, and I'll tell you what, the visual treat, I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but my family is. Only plasma could provide this particular beautiful picture. It was insanely beautiful. Now you'd think that, you know, we're kind of getting to the end of this story, and I'd like to say that this was as easy as it gets, but it's not. Towards the end of the movie, my wife had to get ready for her scrapbooking party, and she was just getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden the receiver shut itself off. Click. I'm like, what the hell? I turned it back on. A few minutes later, click. It goes out again. Finally, I left it off, and we watched with no sound for a while. My wife comes out and says, "Where's the sound?" Explained to her that the receiver kept shutting off, and I didn't know why. Told her I'd probably have to replace it. Yeah, well, she wasn't happy about that. So I go to Fry's, again, and I go to buy another receiver. I ask for assistance. Audio is not my strong suit. I told you guys, if there's no keyboard attached to it, it's not my gig. And ended up leaving with a decent $200 Onkyo receiver. I picked up an S-Video cable for the GameCube, $34. And now it's 6 o'clock, and I still haven't had a chance to really do what I want to do with my TV. Rip my Kenwood out of the entertainment center and start hooking up the Onkyo. There's a lot of wires, folks. That's a lot of wires. Then I got to the subwoofer wires and realized there's no place to put them. The only thing labeled subwoofer was an RCA jack, not speaker wire. Confused, a little pissed, and really tired, I boxed it back up, took it back to Fry's, did the return mumbo-jumbo, and went to find another receiver. This time I turned around every single one of these receivers that were on the display shelf, and none of them had subwoofer wire connections. So what were my choices? According to the guy, the only type of receiver that has subwoofer speaker outs were a home theater kit, which is where this Kenwood originally came from ages ago. Buy a home theater kit, he said, throw away the speakers and use that receiver at home, $250, or buy the regular receiver and a $100 powered subwoofer. Yeah, I got a complete lesson on passive versus powered subwoofer. I won't go into detail explaining the difference, but either way, I was going to spend a lot more money than I was hoping to, $250 or $300. As the dude was writing up my paperwork, I decided to go ahead and go with the powered subwoofer. I bitched about my receiver at home, telling him what it was doing, and he says to me, "Sounds like your receiver, shutting itself off to protect itself." I'm going, huh? Against what? Well, it turns out, folks, and half of you probably already know this, but it turns out that receivers shut themselves off if there are shorts in the speaker system. Told you this wasn't my gig, folks. Realizing that I'd spliced some speaker wire, I began to think I must have forgotten to tape up those leads that I'd patched up. So I told the guy to ring me up. I'd leave the stuff in the car, see if I can hunt down the short on my own. Get home. Now I'm in the 8 o'clock range. I've had this TV for 24 hours and I haven't had a chance to watch anything, really. Put the Kenwood back together, fixed my untaped splice, and threw in Mrs. Doubtfire. Absolutely sure, it's one of our family favorites, folks. Absolutely sure I was going to sit down and watch it. I played on the computer a few minutes and then decided I owed it to my understanding wife to clean up the living room and try to put everything back where it should be. I did the right thing, wrapped all my newly freed wires and cables into nice Velcro tie wraps, picked up the mess, yada, yada, yada. This put me to 11 p.m. Figured this would be a good time to test all the equipment again and make sure I had some documentation for my wife so she knew how to align everything for cable, DVD, video games, whatever. So I'm flipping through my inputs. My cable doesn't show up. Well, that's interesting. The cable box appears to be working, but I ain't got no video. So being the highly skilled technician that I am, I reach around and make sure the damn thing's plugged in. The DVI plug is out, probably when I move things around. So I plugged it back in, and I'm greeted with a very evil message. Copyright protection error. DVI plug has been disabled. What the hell? I unplugged the box to reboot it. It won't reboot. It's now 12:15, and I'm calling Cox to reset my box. It doesn't appear to be working. I'm at wit's end. The guy basically tells me change the component cables because they don't support HDMI. And he feels that that's got to be the problem. I tell the dude it's been working all day. I tell him the error message, etc. And finally I'm resigned to changing the component. As I pull the cable box around to get the back of the cable box, the cable suddenly kicks on. I'm like, whoa, we got TV. And he's like, great. I shift the cable box back into position. Bam, it goes out again. So I tell the guy it's got to be on my end, and I apparently have a short here somewhere. He wishes me luck. I go to try to find the short. After a bunch of time dinking with it, I found out that the coax cable, the hell, has a short in it, like 4 or 5 inches from the plug. And this is the cable company's high-grade cabling. Needless to say, folks, I'm at wit's end at this point in time. I replaced the segment. I'm back in business. The wife had come home, by the way, in the middle of all this, and she was pissed that I had to be on the phone with Cox at 12:30 in the morning. Wife wants to go to bed, so again, I'm still not watching my new TV. Sunday morning, we're up super early to go see the new Pirates of the Caribbean flick, which, by the way, was hella long. It could have been shorter. We get home about 2 o'clock or so. My wife takes a nap, so I try to get caught up on the computer, answer emails, forums, etc. Come about 4 o'clock, so I'm tired. I crawl in bed for a nap myself. I sleep till like 7. Now I'm ready to play. So I start going through each input, adjusting the color, the contrast, the whole bit, trying to get the best picture possible. Now, it's been a week. It's been longer than a week, but it's been a long time now that I've had my HD TV. I had some notes here I was reading off of, so I just got bit in the butt there. It's been about a month or so that I've had this guy now, and I've had a chance to finally go through it. And a lot of people are still on the fence about this whole HD thing, whether they want to go with it, what are the pluses and minuses and things like that. And so now that I've had an opportunity to look at everything, I wanted to give you folks a proper idea of what to expect if you want to make the jump. Because I know a lot of people who listen to the show are techies. First, I'm still stunned that I have a TV that looks that good hanging on the wall. I have a small house, and having the TV basically take up zero footprint is nothing short of miraculous to me. The power of HD comes from the source, folks. In many ways, it is inferior to my Sony Wega. And you have to be ready to accept that. I mean, you have to be ready to zoom into crappy cable to make it fill your screen. You would think that having digital cable from Cox alone should look incredible on your plasma. The fact is, it doesn't. It looks bad. My warning is, if you don't plan on watching more HD content than standard low-res content, be prepared to take a step down from what you probably have now. Sure, it's 42 inches, but the bigger it is, the more stretching it's got to do and the worse it looks. Make no mistake, there's a reason why Nintendo did not elect to make the new Wii console HD. The customer base just ain't there. Our cable company has like maybe 30 HD channels, and 90% of the time, most of them are playing non-HD content, which means they look slightly better on the HD channel than on the digital channel, but not much. If the source ain't high definition, the feed ain't high definition. So if you're doing a white box, media PC type thing, and you have tons of high quality digital stuff there to play back, you gonna love it. Family Guy has never looked better. Even my Knight Rider DVD rips look incredible. I own the DVDs, folks. I ripped them myself. They look incredible on the TV. Needless to say, if you watch actual HD programming, like the Discovery HD, PBS HD, that's like 24/7 high quality content, then you're going to be happy. For me, it was $4 a month to add high definition content to my TV. An hour of help the cable company to get the new box, and I get all of my local HD channels as well. And by the way, Mario Party 7 kicks major ass on the plasma. Alright. Finally, you've probably been wondering why you cared so much about true anamorphic DVDs. Your new HD TV will vindicate your dedication to proper aspect ratio and anamorphic transfers. If there's ever a reason to get caught up into the concept of double dipping, it's to replace those low-quality, nasty letterbox or full-screen movies with widescreen anamorphic transfers, because, yes, on this TV, you're going to know the difference. Not only does your new widescreen TV look fantastic with nice, high-quality bitrate DVD, but, of course, having it in the proper aspect ratio for theatrical viewing is the total bomb. Am I pleased with my purchase? Absolutely. I love it. But I've learned a lot about the technology, folks, and since I was asked to give you a look at that, I wanted to talk about it here. I talk about everything here. But I do have a lot of realization about how small the HD market really is, and that only the specialized really benefit from it. If you don't have that Xbox 360 and you don't have that high definition content coming off your white box, if you don't have an upsampling DVD player, you're not going to take full advantage. If you don't have all those high definition channels at your disposal, if your wife watches Core TV and it ain't in high def, she's going to be pissed. I've learned all this, folks. I've learned this over time. Now, I'm telling you, throwing up the classics, being able to play MAME on this frickin' TV, being able to play my GameCube, my PS2 on here, very, very cool. Just being able to watch my widescreen content in actual widescreen is simply incredible. And it's a beautiful TV, folks. It really is. It's beautiful. Anyway, now that I've actually ran on with the show a little bit long in terms of non-retro gaming radio stuff, I'm sure some of you are probably pissed off at this point. Sorry. My intern asked me for a favor. I did him the favor. So now we can move on to the rest of the show. Let's move on to our editorial commentary, as I'm sure you will like it. I call this one, What Game Should I Get? One of the things I'm asked as a, radio show personality dealing with gaming, I'm always asked my opinion on what game should I get, or what's a good game. And it's funny, it's hard to answer that question when somebody comes to you, point blank. You don't know the person. They've maybe listened to your show for a few episodes or whatever, and then they write to you and say, hey, I just got MAME, I just got a Nintendo DS, I just got whatever. What's a good game? Well, opinions vary. I think Robotron's probably one of the greatest games ever made. That may not work out for some guy that heard me for the first time on dual screen radio. But this brings up a good opportunity, though, to talk about something that is sort of non-platform specific. And that is what makes a great game. And that's one of those things that should be subjective, right? It should be up to the individual. What I think's a great game should be the same thing as what other people think are a great, everyone should have their own opinion on what a great game is. But if you really think about it, if you really pull yourself back from being prejudiced against, for your own game's sake. I like Robotron, but I know you may not. So I may not recommend Robotron cold turkey to somebody, It depends on how old I think they are, based on their email, I might recommend Puzzloop, whatever. But it occurred to me that great games really don't have a mold. You can't look back, you can look back through history and find great games no matter what the era, no matter what the platform, right? If games are truly great, they're great forever. And that's what makes them great. Pac-Man is still a great game. Why? It's super simplex. It's like 1.5K of code on this big giant board that sits inside of this big giant wooden arcade cabinet. But it's still a great game. Right? You can look at Computer Wars on like the old mainframes. It's still a great game, especially if you put two players in and you start massaging around some of the parameters, the gravity and stuff. That's still a great game. And it's still great today. It wasn't just great then. Great games have spanned every console, every platform, every era. This is retro gaming radio, right? So I'm expected to talk about classic video games. And yes, there were some absolute fantastic classic video games. Robotron, as I already mentioned, Mr. Do, Zookeeper. Any one of these games I can instantly be engaged in again. A lot of people feel the same way. Friend of the show, Arcade Nut, Brian King. He still has Robotron, Sinistar, Joust, all these other games in his house. He has a dedicated gaming room. These games are still fun to him. He still plays Robotron every day. These are great games because they're still relevant. Robotron is still relevant. How do you know? Because they're playing it on Xbox Live Arcade. Why is Joust still relevant? Why was Joust a great game? Because even today, you're still playing it. People are paying to play it again. I'm not talking about, MAME ROM whores that have a PC, they download MAME for free, they go and pirate the Joust ROMs, and now they're playing Joust. People are willing to fork out cash. Let's think about it. Look at Geometry Wars on the Xbox 360. Really, it's not much more than Robotron, really. It isn't. It's the same basic idea. They threw a lot of particle physics in there, blah, blah, blah. And it's like one of the best. If you ask anybody with an Xbox 360 what's the best game on it, half the people say Geometry Wars. And it is an Xbox Live, it's an arcade game. It's a classic arcade game with a lot of, frills and fluff thrown into it. At its heart, it's still a standard old arcade shoot-'em-up game, just like we were playing back in the 80s. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not a great game. In 20 years from now, will people still be playing Geometry Wars? Maybe. Right? Because it's a great game, apparently. I've not played it personally. I played the PC version that had scaled down on all the cool artifacts and particles and special effects. I didn't think it was that great of a game. But people swear up and down that it's the bee's knees. And that's cool. Maybe there's something to be said for that. But you look at what people are willing to pay to play. Now, they spent $400 on an Xbox 360. They're paying $15 a month for Xbox Live. And they're willing to pay another 10 bones to throw down Joust or Robotron. That's a lot of bucks to play Robotron, especially when you could play it for free with just a little bit of searching around, a little bit of work. So great games span any platform. Joust played on the 2600, well, maybe not the 2600, the 5200. Joust played on the 7800 is still just as great of a game as it was at the arcade. It's just as great of a game as it is on the Xbox 360, Xbox Live, arcade, whatever. Right? And it's still a great game in MAME. Great games don't have to be improved. Great games don't have to be presented in high resolution. Great games don't require expanded storylines and intricate full-motion video stuff. Not saying a great game can't be those things, but great games stand on their own because they're great. If you were to take a look at, say, look at Dragon's Lair. This is a good example. I haven't brought up Dragon's Lair forever. Look at Dragon's Lair. A lot of people say, oh, Dragon's Lair sucks. It's not a great game. You know. Well, it's a movie that you just occasionally make a move on. Well, that kind of sounds like Final Fantasy to me, but, you know, to each his own. But it recently, as I talked about on another show, when I got to play what inevitably turned out to be Dragon's Lair with stick figures. You know, I mean, some guy basically made a sketchbook in Flash, and you controlled the characters using Dragon's Lair-esque type controls. I was engaged in that thing for like 20, 30 minutes. It's like, this isn't even the great Don Bluth animation. This is some guy's pencil rendering, and it played just like Dragon's Lair. And it was fun. It was entertaining. It was engaging, even though a lot of people say it wasn't a great game. Look at classics like Mortal Kombat 2. A lot of people say, you know, Mortal Kombat started it all. But if you ask anybody who's a real Mortal Kombat freak, what's your favorite Mortal Kombat? Which one do you usually hear? Mortal Kombat 2. And why is that? Why? It's not the best looking game. It doesn't have the most characters, the most moves, the most fatalities, the most friendship and combos. It doesn't have 3D weaponry and all that hooty-hoo. Why is Mortal Kombat 2 the best of the breed, the best of the entire series? Because it was a great game. Mortal Kombat 3 wasn't a great game. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 wasn't a great game. Even the original Mortal Kombat, while it was instrumental in the changing of gaming, it was definitely not something that you would say, hey, this is a great game. It was fun. I played the crap out of it. But Mortal Kombat 2 is what made me buy a Genesis. That was the first home console I'd bought in like 20 years, man. Was a Genesis, just so I could play Mortal Kombat 2. No need to write in and tell me how much better Mortal Kombat 2 was on the Super Nintendo. I know all about it. And actually, I would have probably ended up getting a Super Nintendo, but Mortal Kombat 2 on the Genesis beat the Super Nintendo version by 2-3 weeks, and I wanted it like right now. So there you have it. I bought a Genesis, and that got me back into console gaming. One game got me back into console gaming. And I think that happens a lot with a lot of people. I bought my first PlayStation. Here's an interesting story. You know what a great game is? Mario Kart. But you know what? I'm not talking about the original Super Nintendo Mario Kart. I still don't care for it. I mean, I know we've had this discussion a million times. I don't care for it. I didn't like Mario Kart until it went 3D on the N64. I know, cheating computer players, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it all before. But it was the first time that Mario Kart engaged me. I borrowed some guy's N64 system. My wife, kid, and I played Mario Kart 64 for like 18 hours straight. That was a great game. And you could say, you know, the Mario Kart franchise. Now the best version of Mario Kart's on the Nintendo DS because it's taken the best of all the different Mario Karts. It's the greatest hits version of Mario Kart. And to me, it's the best version of Mario Kart. Plain and simple, right? That game inspired me. This is how bad I hated Nintendo. Everyone's like, oh, you're just a Nintendo fanboy. You know what? I'm not a Nintendo fanboy. Until recently, I finally started seeing Nintendo doing what I was telling them to do. And that got me kind of excited. And so I bought into things as soon as the Game Boy Advance SP came out. But you've heard that story before, too. So this is the problem. I'm running this show so long, you've heard all the good stories. But anyway, so I specifically would not buy a Nintendo 64 because no matter how much I liked Mario Kart, how great of a game Mario Kart was, I wasn't willing to support Nintendo. That's how deep my beliefs go. People say, why don't you get an Xbox? Because I don't like Microsoft. I'm not going to give them a dime of my money as long as they continue to be the goober Borg force that they are. So, but that's, again, another argument. So instead, I waited. I wanted so bad to get Mario Kart or its other game equivalent. So I started eyeballing the PlayStation. And guess what came out for the PlayStation? Crash Team Racing. I played it at a demo kiosk at, I think, Toys R Us. And I was sold. I walked out of there with a PlayStation. Was Crash Team Racing a superior game to Mario Kart 64? Maybe. But it was a great game. Right now, I've got a copy of Crash Team Racing sitting right in front of me. I'm still trying to get to work on the GP2X. Slow but sure. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, you will return to great gaming. At some point in your life, you listeners who are like 35, 40, maybe 30, between 30 and 40, you know what I'm talking about. You've gone back and revisited great games, haven't you? You've gone back and revisited Jumpman at some point. You've gone back and revisited great games like Impossible Mission. Sometimes it doesn't hold up. Sometimes you look back at a game that totally enthralled you and go, it was a lot better back then. And that's okay. But you'll find that the games that truly engaged you, the great games, truly great games, they're still great now. There are tons of games that I can go back and play now, like Super Frog. I'll go back and play Super Frog still, right now. I've got it sitting on my GP2X. I can play Super Frog right now for an hour, 2 hours, and be completely engaged by it, because it was a great game. On the other hand, I can go back and look at other titles that I played around the same time frame that I thought were pretty kick-ass, and now it's like, I wonder what I liked so much about this title. Not a great game. So it makes me wonder how many games are really great that are coming out now. A lot of people scream, Halo, right? Halo's a great game. I'm curious in 20 years if people will still be playing Halo. Not Halo 27, which will probably be out in 20 years, but like Halo. The original Halo. Will anybody be playing that? I don't know. Is somebody right now probably playing Jumpman? Oh yeah, somebody's playing Jumpman right now, I guarantee you. Probably somebody listening to me right now is playing Jumpman, because it's a great game. We've talked in the past about nostalgia and tangibility and all this other stuff. But the bottom of the truth is, a great game is simply a great game. You don't have to dig for it. They're there. They are games that you already know are great. And there are future great games. Don't get me wrong. There are future great games. Games don't have to be 20 years old to be great. But something has to be compelling. Something has to bring you back 5 years later, 10 years later. There are games right now that I have on my DS that I guarantee you in 10 years I'll probably be playing again. It probably won't be on a DS. It'll be on something emulating a DS or something to that effect, but there's still games that I'll play. There will be new incarnations of my favorite games. Some will be great, some won't be great. And if you look around yourself, if you look around what you play, I look over and I see my GameCube. Resident Evil 4. Great game. Fantastic. In fact, I've been tempted to play it again. And that's not like me. Games that have a definitive start and end, when I finish them, I typically don't want to go back to them. But Resident Evil 4 is like, yeah, you want to play me again, don't you? Come on, play me again. I've got a copy of it sitting right over there for the PlayStation 2 as well. And so I look over there and it's like, yeah, you can play me. Come on, it's a different platform. You haven't played me before. Come on. So I've got all this stuff. I haven't finished God of War yet. It's sitting right here. Great game. I just haven't gotten around to finishing it. There's too much stuff going on. I'm too busy. Will I ever play God of War again? Well, I got a God of War 2 coming. So, I don't know. It depends on if they can keep the magic. Not every sequel maintains the magic. Not every game using the same engine maintains the magic. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's easy to see great games if you're willing to look for them. If you're willing to look past your own prejudice, your own bias. If you're willing to say, this is a great game to me, but it's probably not an overall great game. Would you recommend it to somebody else? If somebody writes to me and says, what game should I just bought a brand new DS Lite, what game should I get for it? I could write back my blanket statement and say, hey, I don't know you. I don't know your taste in games. I don't know what you would like. Are you a first-person shooter fan or are you a puzzler fan? Give me some direction. Maybe I can hook you up. But there's always a couple of games that continue to be on the top of every top 10 list that you can say, if you're interested in any of these genres, these are the games you should be buying. New Super Mario Brothers, right? Tetris DS, Trace Memory, what's the other one? Trauma Center, Owendon, right? If you're into these type of games, these are the no-brainers. You have to have them. And it's rare on any console or any system to be able to say, okay, if you're into first-person shooters, you must have Metroid Prime Hunters. If you're into puzzlers, you must have Magnetica. If you are into brain type games, if you're into mental stimulation, you must have Brain Age. Right? How often do you have that? Say somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I just bought a GameCube. What game should I get for it? What games are good? Well, you could probably say Resident Evil 4 and be, that's probably a blanket statement. Anybody who's seen or even remotely cares about Resident Evil knows that Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube is probably the best version of Resident Evil there's ever been. So that's a safe bet. But you can't pick from any of these other consoles. You can't say, if you're into first-person shooters, you have to have Halo. That's not necessarily true. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting to be in a position where people ask you, what's a great game? What's a game I have to have? What's a game that might, I'm going to take whatever you say, as gospel, and I will walk down to the store right now and buy exactly what you say. And it's funny, my cohort on my other show, he told his dad basically that Medios was it. I mean, if you had a DS, you had to have Medios. And, well, pretty much I've never heard of anybody else that doesn't think that Medios is a great puzzler. His dad didn't like it. It's the least played game in his collection, I think. So it's funny that you can miss every now and then, because Medios is a great game. But if you're not into puzzlers, or you're not willing to spend the time to get it, it's a kind of a complicated puzzler. It's not Tetris. It's hard to get engaged. But I challenge you. I challenge you to look and see what is truly a great game. What games do you go back to? What games do lots of people go back to? What games withstand the test of time? What games are being played right now on every generation of console out there? Tetrises, right? The Jousts, the Robotrons, the Defenders, the Ms. Pac-Mans, the Galaga. Every platform from Game Boy to Xbox has these things. And it's not just, rehashing. Galaga's popular. Galaga's still in the damn arcade, and it's been like frickin' 25 years, man. And it's still in the arcade. I can go down right now and actually put a quarter in a machine and play the real Galaga. And Ms. Pac-Man, for that matter. These are great games. They withstand the test of time. And they're great now, just as they were great back then. That's the real secret. That's the real key to great gaming. What do you think great gaming is? Sound off on our message forums at RetroGamingRadio.com. Tell us what you think a great game is. I'd be curious to hear what great gaming is to, say, the more modern generation. What games do you think you'll still be playing 5 years, 10 years from now that you think are great games? Let us know. For our 8-bit flashback this month, I want to talk to you about a great little game. And the reason it's great is because it's so simple. A lot of people are saying, well, that doesn't necessarily make a game great. But it does. Sometimes the fact that they manage to take a game that has really no business being on a platform and still make it so good that you have to talk about it. And I'm sure I've mentioned this on other shows. In fact, I know I have, because I've actually posted the game for certain people. But I wanted to give this an actual proper look. And it's not a long one, because the game is something that we've all played. It's not something that I can give you a whole new piece of information about. But it's so great that I got to talk about it. One of the greatest arcade shooters of all time is undoubtedly Galaga. Everybody's played Galaga. You mention Galaga to somebody, they're going to know what you're talking about. There's been billions of incarnations of Galaga. It spawned from Galaxian. There was Galaga 88 or Galaga 90, depending on what platform you played it on. There was Gapless. I mean, there's so many Galagas, and there's so many similar renditions of Galaga. Games based on Galaga. Games that are basically Galaga, but not called Galaga. And even today, as I mentioned earlier in the show, you can still go find a Galaga machine. They're still playable. There's still brand new Galaga machines being made because they still bring in cash. So that's a great thing. Now, Galaga, if you remember trying to emulate Galaga in the early days when you had like a, P200 back in the old school days when emulation was still like kind of fresh and new, Galaga was kind of a sucker. It was kind of heavy in the emulation department. In fact, you even had to have sound samples for the explosion, because they didn't ever have that quite figured out right. So, needless to say, Galaga's popular. You might remember me talking about Deluxe Galaga in a previous show for the Amiga. Possibly one of the absolute best based on Galaga games ever. For the PC, it's called Warblade. And unfortunately, I think that Warblade has kind of strayed from its roots. It's gotten a little too flashy, you know? So, I love Deluxe Galaga, though. But before there was Deluxe Galaga, before there was Warblade, before there were all of these knockoffs, on the Commodore 64, there was a version of Galaga. Now, this wasn't licensed. You wouldn't look at the title screen and see that it says, you know, Namco or licensed by or anything like that. Some dude just sat down and threw this together. In fact, his name is H. Wenning. I don't blame him for not putting his full name. Who'd want Namco coming down after you, right? But he actually called it Galaga, which, you know, that's pretty gutsy. And the game came out in 1982 on the Commodore 64, and this is, remember I was talking, and depending on how I mix the show, you may not have heard about this yet, but remember I told you that a great game would be a great game even if it was done with stick figures? I mean, if you took a game like Mortal Kombat and you made it with stick figures, it'd probably still be pretty damn entertaining. Well, whether or not it was by necessity or by choice that H. Wenning decided to make Galaga essentially a stick figure game is inconsequent. Because Galaga on the 64, this 1982 H. Wenning edition, this Galaga, it's Galaga. I mean, literally, the way that the ships move, the flight patterns, this guy spent a buttload of time sitting in front of a Galaga machine, playing Galaga and making notes, taking notes of how the birds and the aliens enter the screen, how the bonus challenging stages worked. This guy had everything down to the capturing and everything down to a science. And it's a C64, right? I mean, you have 160 by 120 resolution. How good of a Galaga game are you going to get out of that? But he took and made these games out of blocks. I mean, literally, they're stick figures. They're blocks, graphics. I mean, the only difference between the big thing that comes down and catches you and the little thing is that it's 3 blocks instead of 2 or 4 blocks instead of 1. It's simply stunning. It's so fluid. It like runs at 60 frames a second. How many Commodore 64 games ran at 60 frames a second? I don't know. But this one did. It was so amazing that became the de facto standard of Galaga on the Commodore. I don't think they ever released Galaga for this. They released Galaga for everything else on the planet, but the 64 never got one. Why? It's like, you know, one of the biggest best-selling computers of all time, and it didn't get Galaga. Why? Because some dude made Galaga so good, I don't think they ever bothered to put it out. Some freebie, freeware, no-name dude put together Galaga on the C64, and it was brilliant. So, you know how to play Galaga, you know all about Galaga, so I'm not going to go into the details. Suffice to say that if you've never played this rendition of Galaga on the Commodore 64, then you're missing out. You need to see it to believe how clean it is. You'll look at it going, this is simply amazing. You know what this reminds me of? I'm not going to run this too much longer because it's Galaga. How much more do you need to know? Remember a bunch of episodes back I talked about ASCII games where people made like Missile Command out of ASCII graphics? And it was really, really cool even though it was ASCII graphics? Well, it's the same sort of thing. You just can't believe how good it is until you play it. That was something I got tons of email about. You know, I played that Missile Command game in ASCII graphics, and it's like become one of my favorite games. And it's made out of character graphics, you know, asterisks and greater than and less than symbols. So this is a great example. This ties right in with what we're talking about for our editorial commentary, was that a great game is a great game. It doesn't have to have high-resolution graphics. It doesn't have to have full-motion video. It doesn't have to have digitized sound and picture. It can be block graphics. If it's a great game, it's going to be a great game. Check it out. Tell us what you think about the Galaga on the Commodore 64 on our forums at RetroGamingRadio.com. A lot of people have asked me about the GP2X's progress. The GP2X, of course, is that quirky little Korean handheld, open source, sort of like, think of it as a PlayStation Portable with a little less power, but completely open to developers. no firmware to worry about, none of that stuff. The developers actually encourage people to write software for it. The screen's not as huge and as beautiful as the PlayStation Portable, and it doesn't have any commercial gaming like the Nintendo DS. But for your emulation and media playing needs, the GP2X is a very affordable, open source way of doing things. And as a lot of you have probably heard in the previous shows, I have a little segment I'd like to dedicate each and every show to where the GP2X is at, what's new, and whether or not it might meet your needs. In any event, it has been a very, very, very busy few months for the GP2X. The first thing I'd like to talk about is what I would consider the first viable commercial game for the GP2X is on its way. It's called Payback. This is a full-blown 3D rendered, it looks like a professional game. It doesn't look like Homebrew. It doesn't look like Tic-Tac-Toe. This is basically Grand Theft Auto 2 with lots of style running on your GP2X. There's a video available. We'll try to get you a link to download. Otherwise, go to the official GP2X site, and you can download what they call a rolling demo, which for you old school people know what I'm talking about. It's basically a video trailer, a teaser, if you will, showing the game, what it looks like, how it works. I got to tell you, folks, I'm impressed. And that should be available soon. So I'm really looking forward to that. I knew about this, by the way, like a year ago, but, non-disclosure, I couldn't talk about it. But now they've got a video, they've got information, so the word is out. Possibly the second most exciting thing to come out for this thing is called the Breakout Board. Now, what this is, I'm gonna give you an analogy here. It's exactly like the SX1 or the SX32 was to the Amiga CD32 console. This breakout board plugs into the external port of the GP2X, and it turns it into a full-bore computer. 4 USB ports, RS-232 port, audio and video out, and a JTAG plug. You can plug in all sorts of USB devices, keyboard, mice, joysticks. You can hook the GP2X up to your TV for a proper computer console setup. Very cool. It can run on batteries or its own independent power supply. Possibly what could be the coolest thing on the GP2X. Turn your GP2X into a real Linux-based computer. How cool is that, right? And you can take it with you. Pretty neat. Another, what I would call more a shareware offering, is a game called Vector. And for those of you who absolutely love particle effects and smearing and all that stuff that makes Xbox Live 360 arcade so damn cool with Geometry Wars, this is your game. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to see it other than a real early demo ages ago. Not my kind of game, folks. The game seemed to be a little pointless at the version that I saw. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't massively improved enough to where they actually feel comfortable asking for money for it. But the screenshots that I've seen, the reason I haven't played it, folks, is I don't know where my GP2X is. I took it on vacation with me and I can't find it. I'm sure it's around here somewhere. I tend to lose things. But anyway, it looks good, and if you're one of those kind of people that want to show off your GP2X to your PlayStation Portable buddies or your DS buddies, now you got a little something, a little eye candy to show them. The movie player has been one of the kind of the double-edged swords. The GP2X actually allows you to play back a multitude of video formats and a multitude of resolutions and bit rates. It's very, very good for most people. Now, strangely enough, we were promised MPEG playback, and we don't got any. Well, there's lots of little things about the movie player that people don't like, and so we've been waiting patiently for the GP2X core, the firmware, the guts of the unit to be made open source, because they used an open source operating system to build it and open source software to make it, so they are required by GPL to turn over their code. Well, that didn't happen right away, and a lot of people were pretty pissy about that. You might remember us talking about that on a previous show. In this case, however, they have released it, and now people have picked up the movie player, and they are trying to make a third-party project out of it with new features, better playback, the standard sort of open source movement that you would hope to see with movie player. Again, I haven't had a chance to keep an eye on it. For me, the next thing that I need is MPEG playback. And until I get MPEG SVCD type playback, I'm absolutely content with the player that comes built into it. Now, Homebrew has made a huge jump since we last talked. There are tons of Homebrew projects. I'm going to run through a couple of these just real quick. Megazeus, which is an ASCII version of Adventure Construction Set. Looks kind of cool. I'm looking forward to taking a look at that one. Odonata and Enigma, they're both like side-scroller or shoot-'em-up type games. Dance 2X hopes to be Dance Dance Revolution for the GP2X. We have a game in progress called Gianna's Return. Remember Gianna Sisters, C64 Amiga? Basically a complete fizzy lifting drink theft straight out of Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers. Well, here you go. Gianna is coming back, and the Gianna Sisters are returning in this GP2X game. We also have Shadow Warrior. Remember Shadow Warrior? I believe it was the id game. Was built on like the Duke. I think it was the Duke 3D engine. They've got a build of that out. No sound, but it's coming. The quirky NetHack. Remember old NetHack from the old days? They've got a port. How cool is that? Kuru 2X is that weird GBA game. Remember the one where you have to like take this propeller through a building and you can't touch anything with it? Very, very cool on the GBA. I haven't had a chance to look at the GP2X version, but that looks cool. Remember we talked about that falling sand, that thing where we called it the web top distraction, where you just sit there and watch sand fall and fill things up, and it's really hypnotic? Well, somebody ported that over to the GP2X. So if you need to get, shall we say, hypnotized, you can now do it on your GP2X. Finally, one of the biggest things, of course, that we look at in the GP2X world is emulation. And emulators are on the rise. It's good stuff here. We're going to talk about MAME last because that's pretty much the one that everybody follows. But there's a Spectrum emulator out. Again, I was not brought up in the Specky environment, so those of you who are will definitely want to check that out. Outcast, the Atari ST emulator, got a nice, healthy little update. The GNGO 2X emulator, the Neo Geo emulator, a lot of you are big into that. That has been updated. Apparently, from what I understand, folks, again, I haven't checked it out, they now have a full-speed, with sound, Neo Geo emulator on the GP2X. I know that makes a lot of people happy. Not me. I mean a lot of people. Atari 800 emulators out. We also have HU6280, which is apparently, and I've actually played with this just a little bit, a near-perfect PC engine. You may know it as TurboGrafx 16 emulator, including, they have CD sound emulated now for those cool CD audio tracks. Full speed, full support. That's amazing. I mean, Galaga 88 looks incredible. There's an early ColecoVision emulator out too. Still pretty quirky, not a lot going on there, but it's nice to know that ColecoVision's coming. DOSBox. You know, DOSBox is the DOS emulator that allows you to play old Windows 95 and DOS 6.x type games. And there's a couple new builds of that out. And apparently the cool shooter Tyrion 2000 now has a configuration. Apparently that's the new thing. DOSBox uses a configuration, so people get a game working and then release the configuration file to help you guys out as the end user. Standard, warm, welcome, open source community type support. Good stuff. We also have Dr. MD, you know, the Mega Drive Slant Genesis emulator. They are now using the new, fast, extremely stable Cyclone core. And Cyclone is I believe it's a 68,000 CPU core, which means that more compatibility, faster games, tons of good stuff. Dr. MD has been undergoing several changes. Every time something comes up that's funny about it, they fix it. Probably the smoothest, cleanest emulator on the GP2X, just keeps getting better. Last, of course, and it's the least too, MAME 2.4 is out. That also includes the new Cyclone core. Now everybody's getting into it. 6809 core improvements, speed improvements on many games. They've added command line support, which means we're going to start to get third-party front ends. Graphic and control fixes, some LCD timing issues. They've added this Squidge MMU hack, which apparently allows you to do some sort of MMU stuff. Apparently, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread to emulation developers. They fixed a bunch of sound bugs, and there's a couple new games like RoboCop. And, of course, the tons and tons of little things that get fixed with every type of new release. So that's the GP2X in a nutshell. Next month, hopefully, I'll have an opportunity to look at the new second-generation GP2X, which I understand is not a whole lot different, and give you guys an opportunity to see what's been fixed. Does the LCD look better? Is the joystick fixed? How's the battery life? Hopefully, we'll get a chance to look at that. And, of course, we'll bring you more GP2X news later on Retro Gaming Radio this year. This month's 16-bit flashback, we're going to look at a great game that I've talked about, I think, briefly on a couple of different shows, and I've compared it to other titles in the past. The game I'm talking about, of course, is bar games. Now, what makes bar games great? Well, first of all, what is bar games? Bar games is an Accolade game. A lot of people remember Accolade. Bar games is just what it sounds like. It's a multi-event games that you play in a bar. Now, I know what you're thinking. Now, how fun can that be? I mean, what kind of games do you play at bars? Drinking games, right? Who plays drinking games? And that's about it. You know, maybe some sort of poker or dice or something. Well, bar games is a series of, shall we say, slightly more adult entertainment. Now, that's not saying this is an adult title. This game was put on the shelf with everything else. You don't have any sexual stuff. Now, who knows what this might have been rated these days with the Entertainment Software Review Board, but the game takes place in several different events. It's not like summer games where you have to compete in a series. You basically select a number of players, and you choose from one of 5 or 6 different events. I'm going to cover just a couple of the events because I could spend a lot of time talking about this. I'm going to actually cover 3 of them. There's a couple of other ones that are a little less stimulating. But for the other events that I do talk about, the game is totally worth playing. You have a couple of different goals here. The first one is called Wet and Wild. Now, this is the one that as an adolescent teenage boy, you're going to want to play. This pits you as a guy trying to get this girl's t-shirt wet. And this is done by you positioning yourself above this stage, and there are buckets of water hanging from the ceiling. Now, the girl's on the stage, and she's walking back and forth on the stage. Your goal is to run back and forth across the top of the stage and flip over buckets to spray her down with water. Now, obviously, this is a game of timing, maybe a little bit of luck, and a considerable amount of skill. In the early girls, the first couple of girls that you'll play, they're pretty simple. In other words, they don't change direction very often. They move at a constant speed. And there's really nothing to keep you from totally, douching these poor girls with water. Now, on part of the screen, you get to see the girl's profile from the waist up. And as you get her wet, her on-screen persona changes to show just how wet she is. As soon as you douse her fairly completely, you'll move off of that level. You'll get a bonus for all the buckets you didn't use. Sounds like a pretty cool arcade game, right? You get points for all the buckets you didn't use. And, her shirt starts getting see-through. Now, as you progress through these levels, obviously the girl gets a lot smarter. In fact, she gets really smart. You'll find yourself dumping a whole lot of buckets and not getting a whole lot of shirts wet. But as you get better, the more you practice, of course, the better you get. And you'll learn what her patterns are, how she turns. I'm trying to remember exactly how many girls there were. It's been a while since I've been through the whole set. There were 6 or 8. I want to say 8, but it could be 6. Anyway, obviously, the easier girls you're going to get to see less of when they get wet. Once you get to the first girl, or should I say to the last girl, once you get to the last girl, that doesn't leave a whole lot to the imagination. Now, that's like PG at best, You can see wet t-shirts on television and get away with it. So it's not that bad. But along with the girl becoming a whole lot smarter, you also have the problem of the lighting system getting in your way. Now, right underneath the buckets are a series of stage lights. And in the beginning, the stage lights aren't on. Don't ask me how you're supposed to see the girl with no stage lights on. I don't write this stuff. But as it goes on, the lights start lighting up in a random sequence. Now, I know what you're thinking. What happens if I pour water on the lights? Well, you get electrocuted. And, of course, you waste the bucket. Get electrocuted too many times, game's over. So now you're not only juggling this girl who is running back and forth across the stage, Harry Carey style, but you've also got these frickin' lights. And the lights are random. They don't, like, follow your buckets. They don't follow you. The girl's smart. She watches where you go and tries to avoid you. But the lights are just random. You'd be truly amazed at how often you're sure that those lights are following you, but they're not. Anyway, as you can imagine, this becomes quite a nice little arcade game with some see-through shirts on at the end, right? Not bad at all. So that's the Wet n Wild, and that's on its own would be truly a great game just by itself. But that's not where the game ends. You also have air hockey. Now, this air hockey is not exactly Shuffle Puck Cafe, but it's a pretty decent game of air hockey. More of a bonus than anything else, but pretty good. We're not going to go... It's air hockey, folks. I don't know how much more clear I can make that. The AI is pretty good. Sound effects are good. Control with the mouse. What else do you need to know? The next one I want to talk about, we're going to skip Liar's Dice, because I'll be honest with you, I never quite understood the rules of that, and it didn't help me to play it, because it just got me frustrated. So instead of talking about Liar's Dice, we're going to move on to something called The Last Call. Last Call is absolutely great. This is clever. This is the logical progression of Tapper. Now, you remember Tapper, right? Tapper's the one where you move up and down the sides of the counters, and you got to throw beer, or root beer, depending on which version you play. You have to throw liquid, cups of liquid, to these ever-closing in customers that are coming down the counter. As long as you can schlepp the booze out as fast as you can, your customers will be content. They throw the glasses back at you, right? And it goes on from there. Last Call is great because it takes the concept of schlepping drinks to a whole different level. The screen is divided up into 3 counters. The one that you're standing at, the next one above you, and then the next one. The counters wrap. It's really one big long counter, right? When the cup goes off the right-hand side of the screen on the first counter, your counter, it wraps around to the second counter on the left. So it's like you're throwing down one long bar. But since they, had to make it work for a, 4:3 screen ratio and lower resolution graphics, that's what they did. They stacked the countertop 3 high. Your goal is to toss booze at just the right amount of power to get the booze to the guy or the girl, but not throw it so hard that it jumps out of their hand when they try to snag it. So as you might have guessed, there's a power meter at the bottom. You press and hold the power meter down, it builds up power, and then you launch the cup. The cup slides down the counter, and it gets to its eventual destination. You throw too soft, he doesn't get it, and they complain. You throw too hard, it bounces off their hands and jumps over their hands, and they complain. And this goes on and on. It starts off very, very quiet. One guy shows up, you chuck him a beer, you're good to go. And then he'll dim out. As soon as he starts drinking, they dim out. It's kind of cool looking. It's kind of artsy. And then another person will light up, and you've got to chuck a beer to them. And this goes on and on. Eventually, you've got to be chucking some serious beer. I mean, I'm talking just... you're like lightning doing this stuff. And you've got to do it the right... You got a limited number of cups. Once you break all of your cups, right, because they slide off the counter, too hard, too soft. Once you run out of cups, you're done. And I'll tell you what, this gets super frantic. If you like Tapper at all, if Tapper even remotely interests you, this is the logical progression of Tapper. If you thought Tapper was a little bit too arcadish, this takes and puts the rest of the strategy behind Tapper. That's called The Last Call. I really enjoy that. That's like probably one of my favorite pieces of this. Now, the last one I want to talk about, the last event's called the Pickup Artist. And you may have heard me talk about this on Dual Screen Radio. There's a game for the DS, the Nintendo DS, called Sprung. And it's basically targeted to 13-year-olds, probably more girls than boys. It's sort of a dating simulator. And inside of Sprung, they put you in certain situations. You answer questions that the other person asks you. It's kind of nicely animated. It's nicely drawn. And you answer questions. And based on how you react and the questions that answers that you give to the questions, you may get a little further with that guy or girl that you're, trying to hook up with, or you might get shot down. Sprung is basically the Pickup Artist from bar games. Just portable and, kind of rejuvenated a little bit. So inside of the Pickup Artist, you are tasked with picking up a girl. And this is great stuff, man. You're going to love this. So they hook you up and it's like, okay, it's Wednesday night. You received a note from one of 3 girls. It says, I noticed you from across the bar. I'm wearing a flower. Please come find me before closing time. Right? So you start by picking one of the girls you want to talk to. Right? So you pick, say, the girl in the middle. I'm kind of working this as I go because this is kind of fun. So you pick the girl in the middle, and then you say, what do you want to talk about? Stock market, exotic vacation sites, the latest swimwear. Right? And it's kind of jumping randomly, slowly between these 3. Right? So you don't necessarily get to pick which one you talk about as long as you choose at the right time. Like stock market, exotic, swimwear, exotic, stock market, exotic, swimwear. That's the speed that it's going through. So I'm going to pick on the latest swimwear. So I click on that, and then she's going to give me a response. Oh, hi, I'm Psychic. I bet you wear a Venus one piece and scuba dive on weekends. And then you have certain responses that come back, and then you decide what you want to talk about next, and so forth and so forth. Well, if you answer right all the way through, then the girl will turn around and show you, her front. And you can see whether she has a flower on or not. So not only do you have to get through the girls, you may have to go through all 3 of them before you find the right one. And it becomes a matter of, and there's several different girls. I think there's like 6 or 8 different girls, each with different question bases. And the cool thing is once you learn about a girl, if you see her again, you'll know what to ask her. So there is a finite amount of playtime involved with the Pickup Artist. But it's so much fun. It's frustrating, of course. It's just like any other game where it's trial and error. It's like, okay, the exotic swimwear didn't work, so she leaves. She could have been the one with the flower, but you'll never know because she bailed. So anyway, this series of games, this bar games, as far as I know, came out on the Amiga and also on the PC. Now, I've looked at the PC version, and trust me, you'll want to get the Amiga version, at least play it on an emulator or something, because it's a lot better on the Amiga than it is on the PC. There may be other versions of it. I went looking for them one time, and I could not find another version. But that doesn't mean they're not out there. Anyway, bar games is one of those games that, as a young adolescent male, it might have been a little more fun than it is when you're actually grown up, married, and have kids. But there is something kind of magical about it, especially things like the Last Call. I mean, that's straight arcade action. That's Tapper. That's graduated Tapper. So there's tons of fun. I mean, you'll never probably master that. Okay, the Pickup Artist, you may get through that. The Wet and Wild, you might get good enough to play that. Air hockey's always going to be fun. So overall, the game offered a very good value. The graphics were stellar. The sounds were great. It's something innovative. It's something different. I mean, after all the summer games, summer edition, Hess games. I mean, just everywhere you turned around, it was like Olympic Games, sort of Olympic Games which are dressed up in night outfits, Olympic Games, but it's taking place in Greece instead of the United States, like blah, 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 blah. So you see something like bar games, you're going, hey, that sounds kind of cool. And it was kind of cool. I mean, it totally different. It's a bunch of games set in bars, and How much fun is that? Anyway, this is a game that I talk about a lot because of Sprung. People say, oh, Sprung sucks. And it's like, dude, actually, Sprung is actually kind of fun. I know a guy, swear, God's truth, he's 25 years old. And this is a grown-up dude. And he was addicted to Sprung for a couple of weeks. My kid still plays Sprung. She's like 15-year-old girl. You'd expect her to play Sprung. But she's played through like every scenario possible in that game. So there's something kind of addictive about it. And that's kind of what makes the pickup artist and bar games so great, is that it's something different. It's not the javelin throw again. It's not the 100-meter dash again. It's not track and field again. It's something different. And you guys know me. I like different things. So anyway, that's bar games for the Amiga. Came out from Accolade. Good stuff. I highly recommend taking a look at it, picking it up if you can, and let us know on the forums what you think. We really love bar games, so I'm curious to see what other people think. If anybody's even ever played it, every time I mention bar games, like, huh? You mean summer games? No, not summer games. I mean bar games. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that 16-bit flashback. Look for more game flashbacks on future episodes of Retro Gaming Radio.
Thank you, and welcome to the Hardware Flashback. I am Scott, your host in this newest segment on Retro Gaming Radio, where we will be exploring the world of classic gaming from a hardware perspective. We'll be talking about the machines that ran these great games. We'll be talking about how to find them and restore them to their former glory and preserve them for the future. We will also be discussing pinballs, jukeboxes, how to find them and make them operable. And we will talk about home consoles and how to repair them. We will explore how to make them compatible with today's modern TVs and home theaters. For example, how to tap the S-video and stereo sound that already exists inside of an Atari 2600. For me, the golden age of video games wasn't just about the gameplay, which I dearly love. It was about the presentation of the machines as well. When I look at a game like Asteroids Deluxe, a fantastic game, excellent gameplay, I tend to remember the artwork on the side of the cabinet of that spaceship tearing into an asteroid field with the laser cannons blazing. That set the image of what in my mind was the graphic I was imagining while playing the game. And that theme permeated the golden era of video games. If you look at the Atari 2600, those cartridges had such artwork. Not just the box, not just the cover of the cartridge, but in the manual. When you step up to a battle zone and you peer through the tank's periscope, you become immersed in the world. Can you do that through emulation on a desktop PC in your brightly lit living room? And because of the limited ability of the graphics to convey these images and the emotion of the game, the presentation of the cabinet, the cartridge, the manual, and the non-software elements of the game was essential as it has never been since. I got started in this hobby of arcade and pinball and amusement machine collecting back in the very early days of MAME when I built my first MAME machine. And I quickly discovered that something was missing. When I was a kid and I went up to a pinball machine, there was a whole world beneath that glass that I couldn't touch. I wanted to flip the spinner, targets, and all the other devices by hand. I wanted to move one of the objects on the playfield. I wanted to feel what the ramp was like. I wanted to touch a pinball, but I couldn't. That whole world was denied to me. But now you can do that. You can explore that world. And that is what I'm hoping to help you do in this new segment. I'm going to help you find these games. I'm going to help you restore them and hopefully share with you the things that can never be emulated, like the feel of a Fairchild F controller or the agony of blowing on the end of an NES cartridge. Well, we'll teach you how to fix that too. But I'm a person who believes in dreaming big and doing big. So we're going to jump right to the Super Bowl of classic gaming, and we're going to go to something called the arcade auction. A lot of times when I discuss collecting arcade machines with people, they'll ask, where do you find these things at? There is eBay, Craigslist, and word of mouth, and other avenues. We're going to get into these and other sources, how to optimize them and find the best deal, make sure you're getting a good machine at a good price. But let's get to the main event. The arcade auction is an experience that you'll never forget. Even if you don't intend to buy anything, as a classic gamer, you owe it to yourself to experience this. At the average auction, you will see hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 games. lined up and available for you to play test for several hours before the auction begins and several hours during the auction until that particular game is auctioned off. The auction companies contract with various warehouses, distributors, operators, and even individual owners to bring these games to a location, typically a state fair building or some other large commercial venue that they have rented out for the occasion. Before I got into classic arcade collecting, I had no idea that there was such a thing as an arcade auction. And that makes the first order of your business finding one in your area. Let's say that you live on the East Coast to the central U.S. You want to look at a company called Auction Game Sales. You can find them on the web at auctiongamesales.com. And if you live in the central to the West Coast, you want to look into a company called Super Auctions. And they are on the web at www.superauctions.com. Of course, there are other companies, and you can search them out on Google now that you have an idea of what to look for. These are the big two operators in the industry, though. On their websites, you will find typically a schedule of dates, places, and times at which they are held. They are usually held on a Saturday. There's a preview period of several hours before the game auction begins. This period is available for you to walk around and play test and inspect the games. Planning for the auction as a whole and this preview period are essential to coming away with good games at a good price. When I say planning, what do I mean? There are different levels of planning for an arcade auction. First, there are certain supplies you're going to need to bring. Obviously, transportation. They're big, they're heavy, they're wood. You're going to need a flashlight. You're going to need a few quarters in case a game is locked up. Some of the better games are locked up, and we'll go into reasons for that in a moment. On most games, the coin door will be open. You reach in, flip the switch at the bottom of the coin mechanism, and you're playing the game. Bring a notepad and pens to take notes on the game locations on the floor and their conditions. You're going to need a flashlight. A game might not be working, and you want to know what's inside. Is it gutted? Are all the major components there? Another essential supply is the extension cord. I didn't bring one to my first auction because I thought I would be the only idiot walking around with an extension cord draped over my shoulder. As it turns out, I was the only idiot without one. Be sure to bring a cooler of food and drink, since this is an all-day-long event, and you can spend the entire day doing this, playing games that you haven't seen in years and games you might not see again. What should you expect when you arrive at the arcade auction? Make sure you get there at the beginning of the preview period. It takes some time to go through the rows, and you're going to go through them repeatedly as new games arrive by truck. When you arrive, you're going to need to register as a bidder and pay a small fee, typically about $5. And you're going to need to pay a deposit, typically about $100. You're going to want to bring cash, and when I say cash, I mean quite literally cash. The reason being is that most auction companies give about a 5% discount for paying in cash. Expect to pay a 10% buyer's premium, which is a fee added to the final purchase price, and that's part of the auctioneer's profit margin. Once registered, you will get your bidder's card with your number on it. When the auction begins, it often starts with things nobody would stick around for and then goes into games that will sell for a higher price. You're talking about games like cocktail cabinets, where the wife has allowed the husband to bring one home in the minivan. You're talking about games like Galaga, Ms. Pac-Man, and other games that collectors desire, and then they often move to the more commercially viable games. Games like Golden Tee Golf that are still profitable to operators. Then the middle mass, and finally Skid Row. If you want a gutted cabinet for a few dollars for a main machine, this is for you. There definitely are two distinct crowds at an auction. There are the collectors that are after the classics, and then there are the amusement operators who are looking for a moneymaker that they can put in their bar or a jukebox for their restaurant. Those crowds tend not to cross over so much, and you're really only in competition with the fellow collectors. And then there's a selection of games that fall between these two groups, games that were mass distributed and are no longer commercially viable. These games are often fairly new and in fairly good shape, and will go for less because they aren't considered classics yet. Games like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter you can often pick up for just a little over $100, and sometimes this works out in your favor. I paid $150 for a Street Fighter II that was actually a centipede cabinet, and I restored it to a very nice centipede for about $500 total expense. As the auction progresses, the auctioneer moves from one machine to another using a public address system, and then he starts the bidding around a price that he throws out or solicits from the crowd. And this kernel price is quickly auctioned up. I would advise not to jump into the bidding until the bidding slows down. No sense in driving up your own purchase price. Know the point that you want to get out, and if more of the same game are present further down the rows. And how do you know that? This is where the community looks after itself, as we are so apt to do. There are guys who go to the auctions and take down the closing prices of games, and then they post them on the web for us to use. This is the most valuable tool in planning an arcade auction. One such site is basementarcade.com. A fellow named Mark Davis runs that. And what he does is he goes around to auctions on the East Coast. And there are other sites for other parts of the country. You can typically go back several years. I go back about 3. And you can see how many of a certain game were present at that auction in the past years and what they sold for, giving you an idea of what to expect to see and how much you might expect to pay for a given machine. What will invariably happen is that you'll be on a given machine, say 200 into the rows, and there's a machine maybe 400 machines down that you're interested in getting. How do you conserve your money? How do you know how much you need to hold back? $400, $1,000, maybe only $200? This is an extraordinarily useful tool, and I always take it with me as a reference guide. I find often that some people will see what I'm doing, and they'll walk over and, hey, how much does this one usually sell for? It really is a way that we take care of our own, and I highly suggest you utilize this service. I'm going to get back to something I mentioned earlier when I talked about noting the conditions of the machines during the preview period and why some games are locked. During the course of the auction, the auctioneer will reach a machine and his assistant will plug that machine in. Occasionally it won't power up. The auctioneer might say that it was working minutes ago, and this is often true, and there can be good reasons for this. Sometimes the assistant plugs in the wrong cord, hits the reset instead of the power switch, or maybe the cabinet interlock, which is a safety switch that shuts off the cabinet if the back door is open. That might be tripped. All sorts of things can happen so that the machine works doesn't when the auctioneer tries to power it up. Time is money, and they do move on and sell the machine as not working for obviously a lower price. So pay attention if the auctioneer reaches a machine that you play tested and you know it works. Bid on it because it's going for a lower price. Unfortunately, there is a dark side to this at times, and this is why I mentioned the locked doors. Sometimes unscrupulous buyers will sabotage machines. It doesn't happen often, but it does go on. I personally have brought home a few machines that have been sabotaged. I'll give you a specific example of a recent case. At the 05 arcade auction, I picked up a Donkey Kong that I play tested during the preview period, and it worked beautifully. Immaculate monitor, crisp sound, everything worked. When the auctioneer reached it, it wouldn't even power on. I won the bid on that game. When I got home, I found that the main fuse was missing. The power supply cable to the main board had been disconnected, as were the cables to the monitor, and cables from the power supply to the monitor. Even the marquee light had been disconnected. The adjustments on the monitor for the vertical hold, contrast, bright, etc. had all been turned to their maximums in one direction or another. Somebody didn't want this game to work. In a way, justice is served. They didn't get to go home with the game, but somebody else did. And the problem is, let's say you're a seller and you brought a half dozen games to the auction. They should have sold for thousands of dollars, and yet they go for half of what you think they should because they were tampered with. Do you think you'll be back next year? Well, of course not. If you see somebody up to this sort of nonsense, go talk to an auction official, and I assure you they will take action. I sincerely hope that you'll be able to hear our next broadcast before you attend an arcade auction in your area. In the next segment, we'll go into how to choose which amusement machine to buy. Sometimes non-working is the best candidate. I'll give you an example of that one as well. Galaga typically sells for between $600 and $800 in good working order and fair cosmetic condition. Let's say the auctioneer reaches one and the monitor is fading in and out, flickering, or the board set comes up with a scrambled image. This could be to your advantage as well. Let's say that the game sells for $200 less. A new monitor might be $150. So for less than the other fellow paid for his, you got the same game with the new monitor. We'll go into this more in the next broadcast. It really is some fascinating stuff, and it works the opposite of the car world. If you're familiar with the concept of a restoration, where you put more into the car than it's worth, it's almost impossible to do this with most classic games. I want to make a quick mention of a fun aspect of the auctions. It's not just playing hundreds of fantastic games and pinballs, or maybe eyeing up a jukebox for your game room. Let's talk about the people. There are some absolute freaks that attend arcade auctions. You will see guys that walk straight out of a time warp with big fuzzy afros, blue tinted lenses, and thick plastic frame glasses, and they'll be wearing satin jackets. You'll see guys that literally look like they got out of prison and slept at the bus station last night. You'll see the angry old guy in the wheelchair who will run you over. You'll see all sorts of things. I suggest that you bring a camera, have fun with it, and bring home some great games. On a quick note, before this episode of Hardware Flashback comes to a close, I wanted to let you know that the last 60,000 of the Atari Flashback 2s are in the shipping channels right now. And when these are sold, that unit is over with. This is not your typical plug-and-play game. Not only does it come with 2 high-quality joysticks that are compatible with the original 2600, it can be modified into all sorts of fabulous things. And it's the actual Atari chipsets etched onto a single chip. So it's capable of almost everything that the original unit's capable of. And because of its size, it can be hacked into all sorts of fantastic little portables. We'll talk more about that subject and others on the next episode of Hardware Flashback. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you can find the game of your dreams.
This is Shane Armenroe at the Classic Gaming Expo 2005. So I'm here with the infamous, the man, the one you all were hoping to hear from this year, Howard Scott Warshaw. As always, this is a treasure.
Shane, it's always great to be here.
So much fun, so much fun. What's been going on the last year? Last year you inundated us with everything on the imaginable that you could be up to. We got to hear what's going on. I heard there's naughty things coming, and I can't wait.
As much as you heard last year, it's going to get a little more real this time around. But the first thing I got to do is I got to come out with a shout for Kid Hype. I have to say that
Amen to that.
This really hit me hard. I know it hit a lot of your listeners hard.
And really, yeah.
And this was a sweet guy and someone I really cared for, and I'm going to wear that T-shirt with pride.
Thank you.
And
he would love that. He would be totally honored to have you wearing his face on your back.
Yeah. Brian's a cool dude.
He's a great guy.
Having Brian on my back, that's going to keep me moving.
It's like having a monkey.
It's a lot like the monkey, only, I'd be careful. Howard Cosell got in big trouble for that.
That's true. Good point. You got a point there.
Oh, baby.
Well, we appreciate that, and I know Brian would be tickled.
Yeah, so Brian and his family, just my sincerest. I just got that for him.
Great.
And I just had to put that up front.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, so last year,
we shift from our memorial speaking to S&M. No, go ahead. I don't want to ruin anything.
Oh, no, you can't ruin it because it's going to get the crap beat out of it anyway.
All right.
Basically, I have been working on a documentary. Now, I still got the Once Upon a Atari movie potentially rolling along. We got some deals looking at that. I even have a screenwriter associated with the project now.
Wow, nice.
So that's kind of
Anybody
cool.
we know?
Nope.
Okay.
Probably not. But that's still an under wraps thing.
Cool.
But it's
Gotcha.
a guy who's having a script produced right now for a major motion picture you'll be seeing in the not too distant future.
Outstanding.
And so this is very cool. Yeah, I'm very excited about that because I got a whole new concept. I got a whole new genre in mind of retro reality. I want to do reality TV of stuff that before there was reality TV.
Outstanding. So is Beetlejuice playing you in the film?
Somebody's going to be playing. I mean, I'm getting played all over the place in big time to making this film, man. Everybody's playing me. So
hey, I'm Howard Scott Warshaw.
Be awesome.
I'm just getting played.
Anyway, go ahead, please continue.
But the project I'm on right now, what's going on, and this is kind of an interesting twist, as it were, is I've been working on a documentary that is all about the BDSM subculture. That's bondage and discipline and sadomasochism. It's centered mostly in San Francisco.
Imagine.
Hey, this is some wacky stuff.
You were shooting on location. That's how you were able to come in here.
Totally.
I know you weren't.
Totally. Now I'm shooting everything I can get near, but this is unbelievable.
Oh,
I mean, this is a thing that I had a friend who started to get into this world, and I thought I knew what this was about. I thought I knew all about the S&M stuff and what was it about. And I thought, is it for me or not? I don't know. But it's, I just thought I had a beat on it. And then when I started finding out what was going on inside of it, I thought, whoa, man, I was way off base. And it was so far off that I thought this is worth a documentary. So I started interviewing people, and I have hours and hours of just unbelievable stuff.
Now, you're not going to get this at Walmart. I mean, how are you going to distribute something like this?
You're not going to get this at Walmart, probably, but maybe at Disneyland.
Nice.
The mouse is in the house.
Yeah.
But
what really happens at Cinderella's castle after midnight?
Oh man, yeah, the evil witch. How did she get that way?
No, are you kidding me? I want to see all the chicks that hang out in that castle all getting down together in one room at the top of the castle
and make a pile. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just at Disney World. They had Belle, they had Snow White, Cinderella. They had them all in one room. And just your thoughts start going way out of control.
This thing is wild. No, this is just.
Yeah.
I mean, I got stuff like this. I have one woman who's talking about, there are people who teach classes on techniques for how to deal with this stuff.
Is that something you get at a community college or what? I mean, S&M 101 or?
Oh, no. This is you sign up for it, but not through the government.
Yeah, I bet.
That's for sure.
You get a grant for that, though. That's the important part.
Well, you can get all kinds of things granted, including some wishes. But I'll tell you, it's so she's got this. She's talking about when she teaches her class, and people come in, and she says, it's like, I'm glad if people learn from what I do, and that's pretty cool. And, but I don't demand that people have to listen to everything. She goes, in fact, I'm not a guru, because I don't expect people to just swallow whatever it is I have to give them unless it's strapped on. That's the kind of stuff that I'm getting, and I have hours of this, and it's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So is this just supposed to be like an outside look at S&M type thing, or is it supposed to be? Is it themed to something?
It's an inside look. What this is it's a view behind the scenery on the S&M world. Everybody sees the outside, the facade. What it looks like, but nobody sees the other side of it. There's a whole nother world that's really happening there.
Do you have a whip on you right now?
You want me to whip it on you?
I'm just wondering if you do, because there's some bulge in your pocket.
I know.
I know you're not happy to see me.
There's a lot of ways to say whip it out. Is that a gun in your pocket? I know where it's coming from. Now, I am known for my whips. It's true.
This is true. I've heard stories from Atari.
Anybody who's seen, Once Upon Atari has seen the infamous Raiders of the Lost Ark experience.
That's right. There's a whip in there.
R&D.
I think you have a subliminal desire to use whips and get into that world. That's why Indiana Jones.
Is it subliminal?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe I need to gear it back a little bit.
Maybe so.
Who knows? But I just think this thing is just going to blow people's mind.
So where are you at? I mean, are you in the middle of shooting this guy right now?
I've got all the interviews. I'm in editing right now. This thing will be available in about 2 months, 2.5 months.
Really? Okay, now where do you get this? Bondage.com or what?
No. Vice and Consent is the name of the documentary. It's called Vice and
Consent.
You like
I assume that's your title.
That's my title. It's Vice and I already have viceandconsent.com. Within a couple of weeks, there will be a promo. I'm going to have a 1.5 or 2 minute promo.
Is that going to be in the next Disney flick trailer?
I'm sure Disney's going to be all over this.
I bet.
Although they may have to be fighting Pixar, for the first rights to get in there. Because I know Shrek has been getting into some wild stuff while he's been spending his time back at the shack, So I know that they'll be all over this stuff.
That's awesome.
And it's
So seriously,
Consent.
So where can you get this thing? Vice and Consent. I mean,
well, it'll be available online, just like Once Upon Atari is available online. You'll be able to get Vice and Consent when it's ready online. We're going to go into film festivals with this. I mean, they're going to be selling it to the community. It's going to be all over the place, hopefully, and maybe it'll be at a terminal near you. It'll be at an online connection near you. So
the name sounds familiar. I think, isn't Sony bringing that to the PlayStation Portable, GTA Vice and Consent?
You should see the special controller adapter they're making for it. Now that is going to be unbelievable.
It has an extra heavy vibra unit inside, I'm sure, for the Rumble Pack.
You know the game that you just can't put down? This is the game that you can't put down or you get punished. So it's
awesome.
So I think people are going to be all over this. But I guarantee you, this thing is just going to, everybody has a point of view. They have their thing that they think they know what's going on with S&M. And for the people who think they know what it is, they're going to get stuff so over the top from what they thought, it's going to blow them away. And on the other hand, you're going to see stuff you never imagined was associated with it. I challenge anyone to watch a minute of this and then not watch the rest of it. I just don't think people are going to be able to do it. It's just so unbelievable.
Okay, give us something. Just give a little taste. What's something that everybody has a misconception on that's really not true or that you found interesting?
Well, the first thing that I found really interesting is that really what the S&M stuff is all about is trust, loving, intimacy. Now
Leather shackles really convey that well.
You know, that's the thing. You know, now it seems odd to associate those two things, but
Right.
what I found in talking to these people was that that's all that it's about. I mean, that's totally what it's about, and this will totally demonstrate that. Now, at the same time, it is still about shoving a fist up someone's body and, you know, doing all that too. I mean, that's all there. And I got it all, too. You know, it's
Man.
like unbelievable. So
So are you going to release
we can't say fuck on the radio, can we?
No, we can, but we'll probably bleep it until the next disc comes out, and then they'll get the whole thing.
Well, bleep might work with this. I'll give you another quote.
Yeah, give it to me.
Got one woman who's talking about the internet. You know, because there's the internet scene. There's people who do, you know, the S&M stuff or the dominant submission stuff. There's people who are doing this together in person, and there's people who do it online. Now, the idea of giving someone a whipping or a caning online, a little absurd.
Yeah,
a little absurd, but a lot of people are
Unless
into
you're
that.
Middle Eastern.
So this one woman's talking about that. She goes, I don't buy this internet crap. She goes, I think on the internet it's crap. She goes, because I'll tell you something. She goes, I want to feel skin. I want to smell sweat. I want to see blood. I want to see someone cry. I want to fuck people, and I want to get fucked. Now, how the hell are you going to do that on a video screen?
I think that was Osama bin Laden's dying word.
There it is, you know, and I'm telling you, this is the kind of material that I'm dealing with, and I'm just going crazy just trying to edit the stuff.
Were you sexually aroused through most of this? Or
what's that?
Were you sexually aroused through this, or what?
That's a very good question. You know,
Thank you. I strive for the hard questions.
Sometimes it depends on what came up.
Right. That's the point.
know?
What did come up?
I mean, I found some of this stuff very arousing. I found some of this stuff very curious. But overall, where I kept getting to with this was I just couldn't believe how off my preconceptions were. So you might say, like, I got my preconceptions off.
Right.
You know, but it's really true.
Preconceptions is what I want to get off when I'm involved in something like that. So that's good.
And it was pretty sweet. I mean, that's the dominant feel. I mean, some of this stuff is very hot. Some of this stuff is so far out there,
right?
You cannot imagine it.
Is there always pain involved?
Oh no,
no.
There's the BDSM thing is kind of weird because it's too big an umbrella. It's too big an umbrella.
Right.
You know, the BDSM thing itself is like B&D, DNS, S&M. It's all just a mixture, and it covers everything from, you know, pain, whipping, dominance, water sports, as it's affectionately termed. You know,
hey, bring that all the way up there. Get my good man close up.
But it's you know, it's the sweet stuff. It's things beyond your imagination, things you can't possibly imagine being into, things you hear about that you never would have imagined being into, and thinking, that could be interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're now listening to Retro Bondage Radio.
That's right.
Retro.
Yeah,
Okay,
you guys need Astro to come on and do a spot.
So these are going to be on DVD, I assume, or is this
It's
internet
totally
download?
going to be on DVD.
Okay, good.
Oh, it's not going to be internet download until somebody knocks it off.
Right, and then it'll be up on newsgroups.
But this will be available on DVD at a terminal near you, as I've said.
Is somebody sponsoring this, or are you going out of pocket? What's up with that?
This is, you know, you can't believe how many people were not interested in sponsoring this project.
I wonder why. I mean,
I didn't even look for sponsors.
I bet. Yeah.
This is strictly
good folks at Mattel weren't interested.
This is a Howard Scott Warshaw shoestring production. I was going to get the United Methodist Church involved, but my brother joined, and that pretty much, then it was a conflict of interest thing.
If you get more small boys, you could have gotten a donation from the Catholic Church.
Oh, you get all kinds of donations there. As you know, we've heard on the news quite a bit recently.
Absolutely,
so
yeah. You know what I heard just when we were coming up here? A priest had sex with an adult woman. That was front page news.
That's news.
That's news. You know, you bury the pedophilia on page 39, but the priest had sex with a woman.
That's right. And the bishop said, "Boy, oh boy."
That was what's
or
sad.
Was
is he was
boy
going
on boy. I don't know.
I think the bishop was going, "Oh, thank God, he's had sex with a woman. We can handle this one."
Yeah, but turned out it was a female priest. You know, these stories just never seem to work out.
They never work out. That's what they don't tell you on page 1. So Vice and Consent, was that right?
Vice and Consent.
We got to be keeping. Yeah, we got to
Within
keep
a couple of weeks, I will have a little, like I said, about a 1.5 2 minute trailer for the piece that'll definitely give you the flavor, if not a taste.
Right. Yeah. Now you're going to make something that somebody could look at work or with the wife.
This
around,
is totally not going to be an X-rated piece.
Okay.
But this is totally going to have some very explicit imagery in it.
Yeah.
The discussion is totally X-rated. I mean, there are I mean, it's this weird dichotomy, it's this schism that's going to be created because you have people
The what
talking
was created?
about
Oh,
a schism.
oh, schism. Okay, I'm sorry. I heard something different.
I know where you're going with
Yeah,
this.
sorry about that.
And you're almost there.
Actually, yes, I am.
Oh, yes, I am.
Keep talking. No.
Ladies, just speak into the mic. That's what they say.
Yes,
Yeah.
this thing on?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh, man.
Hello? Do you still have an audience?
Yeah, I don't think everyone left. It's 15 minutes into the interview. They're gone.
So that's coming up, and that's kind of exciting on many levels.
On many levels. So how's the movie is still green lighted at the
Atari.
moment?
Well, this is a thing that evolves as you go along and stuff. So now we're reforming the project. Atari wasn't interested in getting involved.
Imagine that.
That's kind of strange. I thought it was kind of odd. Yeah, because this is like a paid advertisement for them that they were also going to get paid for. They couldn't dig it, but the guy who made the decision that they shouldn't go along with this project, no longer the CEO of Atari.
So you got another shot at it.
Very interesting. That could be, but now we're looking at another angle anyway, where it's just going to be like the movie of my experiences at Atari.
Right.
So it's going to be me at Atari, which becomes an easier thing to deal with rights-wise, and also be a very compelling story because although Once Upon Atari is a very cool story,
yeah, it's very cool.
Some of the stories that are not in Once Upon Atari are my stories because I was one of the least featured characters.
Are you going to have to change the names of Atari and call it?
Oh no way we're changing
like
to Atari because that was the name of the company I worked at.
Right, but
hey,
they're
it's my
not going to
story,
come after
damn
you
it!
like
I'm
so
sticking to it.
You can do that. You would have to get their permission to feature Atari
I don't
in there.
think so, but I think you might need permission for logos and for game screens. That's different. However, as long as this is a documentary, which this should be, I, Howard Scott Warshaw, in the person of Scott West Productions, am empowered.
That's right.
To use name, logo, game screens, all manner of Atari-related material.
But you love America.
And even the new Atari cannot say no.
That's incredible.
It's totally cool. I'm there like a bear.
That's awesome.
And I will bear what's there.
That's awesome. So, but if you hire somebody else to do it as you, right? Doesn't that automatically change it from a documentary into something else?
This is an interesting thing. This is where my whole concept of retro reality comes in. People do documentaries in which they do a little recreational on the way, right?
Right.
You have real people, flashback. And then they show, okay, well, here's the way it looked. Here's what happened.
Okay, I'm with you.
I'm going to do it that way. So maybe I'd be on camera some and say, here's what I did, and then there was the day I walked into this meeting,
you have
and
a
then
flashback
we'll portray the meeting. Right. We'll get like Sharon Stone to play me. I think it'll be very hot.
I think it'll be totally hot.
Yeah, because I used to sit with my legs apart in meetings too, So I think I can't think of anyone who's got better experience or better assets, frankly.
I'm totally with you. I think you'd sell a lot more discs that way.
Yeah, I hope she's not listening right now.
No,
frankly.
I don't think so. Somehow I don't think she's part of my core audience. She might be, and if so, I'm in room 4018.
No, you're not in 408, or
no. Whatever.
There's a lot of people are looking for that room number.
I know they are. Fortunately, I've already checked out. So, you're going to go up and hit the maid, which actually, hit the maid to be all right.
Check that out.
Yeah. The maid is right now in room 8042. Go. Yeah. So what else has been going on? I mean, that can't be the whole thing you've been doing this whole year.
What's been going on? Man, I've been writing, I've been editing, I've been working, I've been running around. I'm doing commercial videos,
Nice.
Like
third-party stuff
production thing.
Nice.
Which is running on. Yeah, actually, ironically, it's for, child services and stuff. It's very cool.
This is awesome.
I just got to make sure I don't get my source confused.
I was just going to say, make the domain for advice and consent .2.
Oh, yeah.
That would be awesome. It was a DNS mix-up. I don't know what happened.
I know. DNS and DMS. Is that just a coincidence? I don't think so. I think there's more to this whole net thing than is made in the eye. And why do they call it a net? So people can get ensnared in it?
That's right. Internet. In the net.
Is it just a network?
That's right.
And work. Is it really work? Not if you're playing.
You have such a fun life, man. What do you...
I have a fun life?
You have a fun life.
Let me tell you something. 3DO went in the fucking toilet. You can beat that if you want. And when it did, it took a lot of my security and a good deal of my money with it.
I bet.
But, I decided from that day, that's it. That's it. I'm just going to not go and do what I'd always been doing and see how that works.
Hey, can somebody,
so far it's working.
Can I see a show of hands who has not worked for 3DO? Well, we got no hands standing up. Okay.
And that was it. It's like you either go get another job or you can just try and make it. What I found was trying to work as hard as I could, trying to put everything away and trying to build a little nest egg and stuff. You know what? It just didn't get there. It all fucking Titanic. It was the Titanic of companies. And I just sucked in the vortex. And so I said, well, maybe I'll try not trying to really make much of a living and see if I can just keep going.
See if it works the other way.
So far, I've basically maintained the same lifestyle for a while.
Wow.
And, thanks to the Internal Revenue Service, I haven't had anything to sit on
right.
for quite a while. I
Yeah.
mean, they not only upped my ass, they took a withdrawal.
Yeah. So for those people who this is their first time hearing from you, talk a little bit about Once Upon a Atari.
Hey, well, that's interesting. Well, Once Upon Atari is the documentary series that I did to show people what was really going on behind the scenes at Atari. And remember, we've got to be speaking in a little while.
What's your time
talking
like?
now, I'm talking then. Oh, we got 15. No
okay,
problem.
good to go.
So,
Oh my God.
So, it was just a quick picture. See, everybody get that on the radio? I hope your listeners won't see the flash.
I'm not looking at the flash, sorry.
But speaking of flash, here's a flash.
Oh.
Once Upon Atari. Interesting documentary.
Yeah, Once Upon Atari. I'm sorry, I was looking about Once Upon a
So,
Gene.
and that just came about because I kept reading media accounts of what things were supposedly really like at Atari and stuff. And what was so lame to me was A, how full of crap these accounts were, and B, how much more interesting the actual stuff that we did was than these accounts that people were putting together. So it just didn't make any sense at all to me. So I decided it's time to do this. So I waited for the statute of limitations to run, which I needed to.
Right.
Because a lot of the material is iffy at best, if not outright illegal. And I became a video producer to do that story, and I've told that story. Now that's available at onceuponatari.com. Anybody wants to see it, but it's the word. I mean, among your audience, either most people who are listening to this probably know someone who's seen it.
Right.
So check it out.
And so is that one volume of that?
There's one volume now with 4 episodes, all
Right.
on one DVD. It's also got extras. It's got some of my favorite extras. It's got Nolan Bushnell talking about what a creative environment really ought to be for engineers.
So that's fascinating stuff. We should send that to CEOs.
We should. And here's another thing we should send to CEOs. It's got Trip Hawkins talking in 2001 about how the future of 3DO is totally assured, locked down, no problem whatsoever. And it's got a little tail thing at the end to say, oh, by the way, in 2003, 3DO closed its doors.
I was going to say, he should fire his palm reader because I think she gave him some bogus info on that one.
Yep. And, I'm not going to take this as far as the Palm goes because, there's a lot of places you go with that. Palm OS, it's not just code.